Hello everyone and welcome to my Soap Twist 24. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Brooke Logan had never felt anything like the weight of the air in Los Angeles. It was heavy with the aroma of jasmine and exhaust, a familiar combination that had previously seemed like home. It clung to her like a shroud, heavy with the prospect of exile. She stood on the balcony of her Forrester Creations office, gazing out at the city skyline, its jagged edges piercing through the dusky sky. Her fists grabbed the railing, knuckles whitening as the words Thomas Forrester had spoken hours before resounded in her head like a persistent drumbeat. "Leave Los Angeles, Brooke. You go, or I reveal the truth about what you did. Ridge is unaware of the secret you have buried so deeply. Do you believe you can keep running from it?" "I know everything," Thomas said, his voice cold and calculated, devoid of the warmth she had mistaken for affection. His once familiar eyes had glinted with a deadly certainty. He wasn't lying. Brooke's heart had dropped, and her breath caught in her throat as the walls of her carefully built life began to fall. The secret. She'd kept it for years and told herself it was buried forever. How did he find out? And why now? Brooke's thoughts returned to that night years ago, when desperation drove her to make a decision she has regretted ever since. It wasn't simply a mistake. It was a betrayal that might destroy everything she'd established with Ridge, her children, and the Forresters. She'd been so diligent and meticulous in hiding her tracks. But Thomas, with his unwavering drive and quick brain, had uncovered it. And now he was holding it like a weapon, ready to destroy her. The city below bustled with activity, oblivious to the storm erupting within her. Brooke's gaze swept across the dazzling lights in the distance, each one a reminder of the life she'd battled for. The glamour, the power, the love. She'd fought her way to the top of Forrester Creations, enduring scandals, sorrow, and betrayal, only to find herself at the mercy of a young man she'd once called family. Thomas, Ridge's son, whom she had helped nurture, now served as her judge and executioner. She moved away from the balcony and returned to her office. The room felt smaller now, as the walls closed in. Her desk, filled with sketches and fabric swatches, reflected her legacy at Forrester Creations. She'd poured her heart and energy into this company and the designs that had elevated her to celebrity status. But none of this mattered anymore. Thomas issued a clear threat: leave or lose everything. Brooke slumped into her seat, shaking as she groped for her phone. She browsed through her contacts and paused at Ridge's name. Her husband. Her rock. The man she'd loved despite decades of disaster. Can she tell him? Could she tell him the truth and beg for forgiveness? The thought made her stomach turn. Ridge had forgiven her for many things, including affairs, deceit, and blunders, but this was different. This truth has the potential to break him, shattering the fragile trust they'd formed over years of hardship. Her finger was hovering above the call button, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. Instead, she put down the phone and buried her face in her hands. Tears welled up, hot and unyielding, and rolled down her cheeks. She wasn't just grieving for herself, but for the life she was going to lose. Her children, her home, and her identity. Brooke saw Los Angeles as more than just a metropolis. It was the stage on which she had performed every role: lover, mother, and billionaire. To leave it behind meant to delete herself. The door to her office creaked open, and Brooke's head snapped up. For a tiny moment, she hoped Ridge had arrived to save her from this nightmare. But it was Thomas, his big frame dominating the doorway, his countenance unfathomable. He went inside, closing the door with a quiet click that seemed to cement her fate. "Brooke," he murmured, his voice low and forceful. "Have you made a decision?" She remained there, wiping her tears away, unable to let him see her brokenness. "Why do you do this, Thomas? After everything we've been through, everything I've done for this family." "Don't," he interrupted her, his tone stern. "Do not play the victim. You understand why. You've been manipulating and strategizing your way through this family for years, always coming out on top. But not this time. This time you'll pay for what you did." Brooke's breath caught. I'm not sure how you found out, but you don't comprehend the entire story. You have no idea what I was going through. I don't care, Thomas snarled, taking a step closer. His eyes flared with a combination of rage and something else. Pain, perhaps? You made a decision, Brooke. A decision that harmed people I care about. And now you're going to face the consequences. She wanted to fight, beg, and persuade him to see reason. However, the sight in his eyes warned her it was hopeless. Thomas wasn't simply upset. He was resolute. Whatever he'd discovered, whatever reality he believed, had hardened him against her. There was no reasoning with him, no appealing to the boy she used to know. What do you want me to do? She inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. Leave, he replied simply. Pack your belongings, say your goodbyes and leave. Anywhere except here. If you stay, I will ensure that everyone learns the truth. Ridge, Hope, the press, everyone. The weight of his words fell on her like a stifling blanket. She pictured the headlines, gossip, and betrayal in her children's eyes. Hope, her daughter, had already suffered greatly as a result of Brooke's decisions. Could she put her through it? Could she face the world knowing her darkest secret was exposed? I need time, she explained, her voice quivering. I can't just. You have until tomorrow morning, Thomas interjected. After that, I'll start talking. He turned to leave, but stopped at the door and looked back at her. His gaze softened for a moment, and Brooke thought she saw a glimmer of doubt. But it vanished as fast as it appeared, replaced by the same iron resolve. Don't test me, Brooke, he added before leaving. The hush that ensued was deafening. Brooke stood still, her thoughts whirling. She could fight this. She may find a method to discredit Thomas and turn the tables. But she knew it was meaningless. The truth was a ticking time bomb, and Thomas held the detonator. Even if she managed to hush him now, the secret would remain, waiting for someone else to discover it. She stepped to the window and looked out at the city once more. The lights seemed dimmer now, and the skyline looked less enticing.
Los Angeles had once been her castle, but it is now a prison from which she must escape. She thought about her children, Hope, RJ, and Jack. How would she describe this to them? How could she say goodbye without explaining why? The tears flowed again, harder this time. She did not bother to wipe them away. Instead, she let them fall, each one a piece of her broken heart. She remembered Ridge, the evenings they spent twisted in each other's arms, promising forever. She recalled the laughing, disagreements, and moments that had marked their relationship. Could she leave him without saying anything? Could she leave the man who had been her everything? Her phone buzzed on the desk, jolting her out of her thoughts. Hope texted, Mom, where are you? We need to discuss the new line. Dinner at home tonight? Brooke's heart squeezed. She couldn't face Hope tonight, couldn't sit across from her daughter and pretend everything was normal. She typed quickly, her fingers trembling. Sorry, sweetheart. Not feeling well. What about a rain check? She pressed send and immediately regretted it. How many more falsehoods would she need to tell? How many more moments would she miss? The notion of leaving Hope, and all of them, was painful. But staying meant putting everything at stake, including not only her reputation but also the love and trust of those she cared about the most. Brooke spent the night in her office, unable to return home. She sat on the couch, staring at the walls, recalling Thomas's comments, the secret, and the moment that altered everything. She considered where she could go. What about New York? Paris? Somewhere far enough away that the past could not follow her. But no matter where she went, she knew she'd be carrying the guilt, shame, and loss. By the morning, she had made her decision. She couldn't fight Thomas without killing herself and those she loved. She started packing, her movements mechanical, each thing a reminder of the life she was about to leave behind. The images on her desk, Hope's wedding, RJ's graduation, Ridge looking at her as if she were his entire world, were too upsetting to look at. She was unable to take them with her, so she left them there. She wrote letters instead. One for Ridge, one for Hope, and one for RJ. She put her heart into them, expressing everything she could without disclosing the secret. She told them she loved them, apologized, and hoped they would understand one day. She wasn't sure if they'd accept it, but it was all she could offer. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, Brooke stood at the airport with her suitcase by her side. The metropolis stretched out before her, a glittering temptation that she could no longer resist. She boarded the plane, her heart burdened from what she was leaving behind. The secret remained hidden, but at a cost she never expected. Brooke watched as the jet took off and Los Angeles disappeared behind the skies. She had no idea where she was heading, but she knew she would never be able to return. The metropolis that had once been her home, battleground, and everything was now a memory. And while silent tears streamed down her cheeks, she wondered whether she'd ever find a place to belong again. Brooke's hands shook as she stood alone in the Forrester estate, her reflection in the huge glass window that overlooked the sweeping hills of Los Angeles. The night was filled with silence, but not the comforting kind. It was stifling, crushing against her chest with the weight of secrets she had kept for years. She had always understood that some truths had the capacity to unravel everything, but she never imagined one of her own would turn those truths against her. Thomas Forrester had approached her earlier that day, his voice low but keen, and each word was venomous. He had always been intense, carrying the shadow of his father's ambition alongside his own yearning to be seen. But this time, there was no pleading for respect or recognition. This time, he had a firearm pointing squarely at her heart. "You think your place here is untouchable," he'd continued, his black gaze never leaving her. "You've spent your entire life believing that the Forrestons will always forgive and that my father will always return to you. But not anymore. I know what you did. I know the secret you've kept concealed, and if you don't leave Los Angeles for good, I'll make sure the whole world finds out." Brooke stood still, her lips parting but no sound coming. She wanted to call his bluff, dismiss it as one of his tactics. But deep down, she knew he wasn't lying. He'd found out. Somehow, someway, he had discovered the truth she thought she had buried so deeply behind years of scandal and heartache that no one could ever find it again. That secret was not solely hers. It wasn't only about her faults and regrets. It was about her family, her son, and the fragile bond of identity and love that held them together. If it came to light, it would destroy not only her life, but also the lives of those she cared about the most. Her heart hammered in her chest as she pleaded, "Please, Thomas. You don't understand." "I understand plenty," he interrupted, his tone chilly. "Brooke, you've wrecked lives with your falsehoods. You've walked about seeming to be the victim when all you've done is steal. My father, my family's trust, even the future my sister deserved. You take, and now you've taken something you don't own. If you don't go, if you don't abandon this city and everyone in it, I'll tell them all. I'll burn down all you've built, and I'll see you lose the only thing you've ever cared about, your place in this family." The words echoed in her thoughts as she stood in the dimly lighted room. He had been brutal. She begged him for mercy, but he glared back with iron resolve. She realized then that Thomas wasn't lying. He was prepared to expose her. Brooke slumped into the sofa, her hands pressed to her temples as tears streamed down her face. She had been involved in scandals before. She had weathered the whispers, betrayals, and headlines portraying her as reckless and selfish. But this was different. This secret would demolish everything. The most painful aspect of it was that it wasn't even about her reputation. It was about the people she cared about, people who did not deserve to have the truth ripped through their life like a storm. She thought about Ridge. They had spent years in a never-ending cycle of love and heartbreak. Even when they disagreed, he was always there for her. She had mistakenly imagined, perhaps naively, that he would always return to her. But if he understood what Thomas had threatened to divulge, he would never look at her the same way again. She couldn't handle the disgust in his eyes and the betrayal on his face. She thought about her children, of the life she had battled so hard to provide them. If Thomas informed everyone, they would lose more than their mother's dignity. They would lose their sense of themselves and confidence in the life they had always known. She couldn't let that happen. She couldn't let her past misdeeds to spill into their future. The decision Thomas required of her was impossible, but unavoidable. Leave LA forever. Disappear. Abandon the life she had established, the family she loved, and the city that had served as a platform for both victory and sorrow. But perhaps it was the price. Perhaps leaving was the only way to protect everyone. Brooke got up from the couch and walked slowly upstairs, each step heavier than the last. She took a bag from the wardrobe and placed it on the bed. The sound of the zipper opening marked the end of a chapter in her life. She began folding garments in mechanical motions, her tears distorting the fabrics in her palms. Every item she packed into the suitcase seemed like a betrayal of her home, her family, herself. She paused when she noticed a framed portrait on her dresser. It was of her children when they were small, with big smiles and arms around her waist. She grabbed it up and clutched it to her chest, sobbing. How could she walk away from them? How could she leave without saying goodbye or explaining? But she realized she had no choice. If she told them, or tried to explain, the truth would be out, and Thomas's warning would become a reality. As the hours passed, Brooke went silently through the home, her luggage packed and ready at the door. She moved from room to room, running her fingertips along the walls, furniture, and memories hidden in every nook. It felt like she was strolling through a tomb, bidding farewell to the spirits that had formerly inhabited her life. When she returned to the living room, she stood in front of the fireplace, the site of numerous arguments and reconciliations. She remembered Ridge's arms around her here, the firelight creating shadows as they pledged that this time would last forever. She remembered the battles, the accusations, and the broken wine glasses tossed in wrath. This room has seen everything, and this would be her final exit. She muttered into the solitude, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The words were insufficient, but they were all she had. The first light of morning filtered through the windows, casting the sky in delicate tones. Brooke wiped her face, grabbed her suitcase, and unlocked the front door. The cool air struck her like a slap, stinging and waking. She halted on the entrance, her gaze sweeping across the city she had called home for decades. Every street contained a memory. Every place was inscribed with a piece of her narrative. Leaving felt like breaking her in pieces. She stepped forward nonetheless. At the end of the driveway, a car was waiting to take her to the airport. She slowly and reluctantly placed her suitcase in the trunk. She glanced back one more time, looking at the house and the life she was leaving. Brooke's lips quivered as she said, "Goodbye." As the car drove away, she buried her forehead against the window glass, tears silently spilling down. She knew she could never return. She realized the life she had fought so hard to keep was gone. And, while Thomas would receive what he desired, her absence, she hoped, prayed, that her sacrifice would be sufficient to keep the secret hidden, to spare those she loved from the devastation of truth. But a question gnawed at her heart. How long could a secret be kept hidden? Thomas had pushed her into exile, but she knew the truth would follow her no matter where she went. Brooke carried her anguish like a never-ending scar, alone and damaged, far from the city that had defined her. She had always felt that love could conquer all, and that no matter what happened, she would find her way back. But this time, the narrative turned out differently. This time, she was not going away in rage or disobedience. She was walking away in anguish and silence, carrying the burden of a secret that had ruined her. For the first time in her life, Brooke Logan understood what it was to be genuinely, devastatingly alone.